Hello and welcome to my channel, Code with Lewis. Today I'm going to introduce you to Tailwind, which is a CSS framework that I've personally been implementing recently, and I've kind of fallen in love with it, which is why I want to do a video on it. The goal of this video is to introduce Tailwind to a CSS developer, front-end developer, and hopefully convert them into a Tailwind advocate. So if this person is you, please do let me know in the comments down below. For a quick overview, Tailwind removes the need to write the majority of your CSS, let's just say 95% to be safe, and by using specific class names in the element tags in your HTML. Tailwind is kind of like a sort of massive pre-built database that contains all of the CSS attributes you would typically be using in your styling of your front-end server, but instead of writing the CSS, you put it as class names in the tags. So say for example you want to do some padding, you would actually write how you'd want the padding done in the element tags. Let's head over to the Tailwind documentation to have a look at how this is done in more detail. So I just want to quickly give some sort of reference for people visually versus what I'm saying, because you might be thinking, what the hell is this person talking about still? So I just want to show the sort of Tailwind website where they give us examples of what's happening here. And as I said, we have this image element here, and the classes are being added here. But of course, not even expect, we're not writing W-24 in the CSS file. That is being done for us, that is being built for us by a Tailwind watcher, which sort of sees us type this, and they create that CSS file for us, add that sort of CSS class for us in the output file. And yeah, we can just go through and see, like, font medium here. You can sort of recognize these names slightly, some of them are slightly different, but they all sort of pertain to a very similar thing. So here, this is a medium screen that's got rounded none, and that's obviously like a border radius. MX auto, so MX is the margin on the x-axis, and that is obviously being set to auto. So yeah, you can see that a lot of these things, they might look a bit weird now, but actually when you learn what they're doing, it's actually quite simple. Let's go through some of the pros of Tailwind, which I believe are many and quite substantial. So to begin, using Tailwind, it will really help you to reduce the number of files that are in your application. So for example, the Adopt a Core full stack application that I made in the bootcamp with a group of friends. The problem with that is that when it got too heavy, it got very, very big very, very quickly. And this was just an application we built in 2 weeks, never mind a full-scale production application. You started having so many CSS files within components, within pages, and within our routes. And of course, when you're doing this, there may be CSS left over when you're sort of extracting a component from a page. Maybe you have a long page and you want to reduce the size of that page code. You extract some of that into a component, and you might have residual code left over in the parent CSS class, and that may interfere with some CSS you're doing in the child class. Or maybe if you've got two similar web pages that you're using like similar class names for, of course that could affect it as well. So yeah, you really want to reduce those files because you don't want to see, don't have to be in a situation where there's leftover code in a different CSS file that is affecting code that you're doing in a different one. So yeah, reducing the files sort of automatically helps overcome that. Not having redundant CSS and poorly written CSS clogging up your app is something that Tailwind really helps to do. I saw Kent C. Dodds mention, I can't remember where, but he said that in PayPal, there was like 90% of the code base, CSS-wise, was kind of just redundant code. It didn't actually do anything. And of course, that's something you want to avoid, because you end up in the sort of cycle of pointlessly adding extra classes, trying to improve the specificity rating of whatever your sort of element selector is. You're maybe writing banging importance, adding IDs, all these sort of things. Just desperately try and change it. A Tailwind, there is no, you remove that desperation of trying to change it. by overriding and spamming just classes to try and do it. So I think that's a massive thing that Tailwind really helps with. You can add in custom classes as well. So I'm going to show you a great use case in this video where we have a nav bar that has a lot of very similar sort of attributes that we want to add to it. And here we can just create a custom CSS class that will have all these custom attributes in, and then add that to the specific elements we want to have those attributes. So yeah, adding that custom CSS is important, and exactly why I said there's 95%, the vast majority of your code will be done with the class names, but then when you want to do something very specific, you can just create your own custom CSS class. And finally, it's really good for responsiveness. In the application we're going to build, the website we're going to build, we're going to pre-program some breakpoints, and we're going to use those as prefixes to change things in our application. So when we have the typical full screen mobile screen with the nav bar that has a burger bar, we're going to have that with the class as obviously flex or block, however you want to do it to begin with. Then when we hit say medium size screen, but medium hidden. So it's really simple to do like that. It really helps simplify the process. That was the one thing I think really brought me into sort of loving Tailwind, I suppose, as well as they're not writing the CSS, because exactly as I said, like in the Adopt support, they ended up being so many classes and so many instances of CSS files. They start overlapping, and it just gets kind of tough sometimes knowing where things are and what's doing what, especially when you're like rushing and doing a 2-week project. If we had a bit more time, we could probably be a bit more snazzy with it. As well as pros, of course, there are some cons, and it can really complicate like a simple HTML file, and it's not as easily digestible because of that. I mean, if you think you've got all these class names added into your HTML is probably, well, it will not be as easily digestible and readable for someone, and especially if you're new to HTML, it's probably going to be quite tough to do it. So I would personally suggest, at least a decent bit of experience in HTML and CSS as well, because you need to know what you're looking for when you're looking in the documentation and trying to do what you're trying to do in the actual code. With Bootstrap, which is like a rival framework, you get sort of pre-built components, which are really useful if you're trying to build a website quickly, or you don't want to worry too much about customizing the style and having the amazing style that maybe you could do with Tailwind. It means there's a lot more room, like positive-wise, there's a lot more room for Tailwind to customize your elements, but sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you just want clean pre-built components, and that is somewhere where Tailwind lacks. We've done the introduction now, so hopefully I've given you a nice overview of Tailwind. Let's get into some coding. I'm really excited for this. I haven't done any coding live yet. So yeah, let's get into it and build a responsive website with Tailwind. Let's get started with the coding then. You can see I've got a simple VS Code like template over here. So we've just got the index, the main.js, and the stars.js, CSS, sorry. And let's just create the skeleton of the HTML file with Emmet there. Here we're going to change the document to Adopt support, as it is based on the Adopt support site. And in the body, I'm just going to put a quick H1, just hello world. I save that. I'm going to open a live server. So we've got that in there now. Before we go too far into the Tailwind, I just wanted to mention this Tailwind CSS IntelliSense extension. It's really, really useful. It sort of gives you, suggestions of what you're typing. So you can see BG-RE, it's saying all the sort of shades of red there is, BG-repeat, all this sort of things. It also gives us linting as well, in case we are making errors. So yeah, I really recommend downloading that. I really think it will help you when you're building your Tailwind applications. The code, we've just got our little simple hello world there, just so we can show that on our live server here. And then we're going to start filling things out. So we're going to need some fonts. Here now you can see I've added the fonts in here. So we've got the Google API for Roboto, and the relevant stuff you need to add in, and as well font awesome. And just on this note, please don't use my font awesome kit because too many people use it, and all of us will be able to use it anyway. So I recommend just downloading your own. It's completely free. There are certain icons that you have to pay for, but the ones that we're using will be completely free. So don't worry about costs. And now let's continue with our installation. So we're going to install Tailwind CSS here for the first step. We're going to need to go copy this and go to terminal, and we are going to replace that in. Now we can see that's been done, no problem. And you can see the last thing it says, create the Tailwind CSS config file. So we can see here we have a config file. I'm just copy and paste the things that I know I need, and you guys can copy them as well, of course. But if you want to put your own twist on things, add in your own colors, choose your own breakpoints. Breakpoints aren't too big a thing, to be honest. But if you have, say, a red themed website, maybe like the Google Chrome over here, just add some shades of red in that you feel will work well in your project. See, we've got the sort of screens in, so this is determining where our breakpoints are: the small, medium, large, Excel, and the colors as well: dark green, light gray. That one's in twice, the ED. So we'll get rid of that. But yeah, we have our sort of Tailwind config sorted now. So let's work on the next step. So here we've actually configured the template paths. This is already done, and that is stuff here. So we're just looking at all the files that have .html at the end within this sort of folder, and that's quite simply just that index.html. Now we need to add the Tailwind directives to our CSS. So we're just going to copy these and put them in the styles here. It really is as simple as that. And then finally, we need to start the Tailwind CLI build process. So we're going to copy this, but notice how they're actually looking for the input.css here. Ours is called styles.css and also isn't within a source folder. We're going to have to slightly change this. I've just copied that in, changed it to styles.css, and we can check what that relates to there. So that's this bit here with the directives that we added before. And now if we enter, that should be all good. And now we can actually start building. So before we start building, we just need to go to index.html, and we need to enter our style sheet. The style sheet there, and we're going to have the reference actually within this folder here. So we need to go across here into this output.css. So now everything we do, and we see this rebuilding down here, that's showing us that Tailwind is actually watching what we're doing right now. And when we did those final directives, those final commands, we actually created the distribution folder and the output.css. So now if we go to the hello world, and let's do something like class font size. So that's text dash, put it there. So that's what it is right now. And let's just put for Excel and see what happens. We see the text has got bigger there. So if we go down to just put medium, go right down, so we can change it to Emerald 900 or 800. And see that's a bit green, and then we just go text again, dash 5 XL. We can see that that's changed now. So we can see that our Tailwind is working. We are changing this file, and we are writing any CSS. So now it's starting to look a bit cool. And that's all the setup done for us now. So let's start coding the real website. Let's start building this header. So we'll of course get rid of this. Let's put a comment in. Excuse me. So for the header there, just for us to refer to. And of course, we're going to start with a header tag. Something else from Emmett I just want to show as well. So we can put header dot. Let's just say BG dash. I think it's dark green A. We create that sort of header with the background sorted there. I'm going to put a div in there that's going to be used for like stylistic reasons in case we want to shrink the contents. You know, nowadays we see a lot of websites where the screen is very central, especially on the larger screens, without much going towards the outside to keep our focus to the center of the screen. So this div is more stylistic. Obviously, a header is basically a div, but just semantically called a header. So yeah, let's have a look at what's happening now. Don't have anything because, of course, there's nothing for the header to expand to. So let's add some things in there. So it's the main part of our header. It is exactly what the site is. So let's just give it a h1, and we're going to call it, of course, adopt a for. Now, hopefully, there we go. The green background comes up, and if we think mobile first, what we're going to have on the mobile. So actually, on the mobile, we're just going to have h1 adopt a for, and then we're going to have a sort of icon that is going to be a sort of burger menu. We're just going to leave that with an X for now. And we can see that, of course, on top of each other. Now we can start implementing Flexbox. So we're going to go here, we're going to go class, we're going to choose flex, which is going to create this as a sort of flex display, this div here. So we're going to put flex row, which is then going to put them into a row. And then we're going to put justify green. And there's no points going for what this is going to do, so we're going to save that twice. I can see here the adopt for on the left and the X on the right. And right now, you can't really see the adopt for. Let's change the color of the text. So let's go text -white, and we can see the change of color. The text here is actually quite small as well, so let's change the size. So we go text. Let's see what 3XL looks like. That's not too bad. And now we can add some padding. So let's do padding X, padding Y separate. So PX on the whole thing. Not 0, of course. Let's maybe put 4. See what happens. So you see how that's done a little indent there. And PY, let's call it 8. Although actually we are doing mobile first, so we should looking at this on a mobile screen. It's going to look very small though. So sorry for that. We can see we've got our, adopt for the X on the right. Looking good at iPhone SE. I think 5 is one of the smallest ones. So let's work with that. And maybe we'll change that to 6. Yeah, that's looking pretty decent in my opinion for a start. So let's start adding the more complex things in as well. So we're going to want a nav, of course, and that nav is going to have a UL in, and that UL is going to have 4 list items. So these list items are going to be called adopt, advice, got news, and organizations. We're going to add that in. And to we can go to a bigger screen now to avoid the sort of slowness of things when we're in the sort of inspect. And straight away we can see we've got a problem. So of course when we go bigger, we don't want to have this X. So with this X, what we can do, so let's call the class and let's just say flex. And then when we get to, right now we're going to say medium-sized screens, we want it actually to be hidden. To do that straight away, it's gone. If we look responsive wise, so we also need to do the exact opposite for here. So let's actually do that first. Let's do this nav. So it's going to be hidden until we get to a medium-sized screen, and then at that point it's going to be flexed. So let's see how this affects our page. So here we have our sort of breakpoint, and we switch to the The drop down has now gone into just a typical navbar menu. Let's make this small again, as we are doing mobile first. We do want to consider that first, and now we're going bigger. I want to start considering how that looks. So straight away, as you'd expect, we want this UL to have a flex row, so we can have that class. So we need this to be flex, and because of course this is inside the nav parent, the ULs are inside the nav parent, you don't need to worry about any of the sort of hiding the class or anything here, because if the nav's hidden, then this whole thing is hidden. So flex, we want flex row, and we probably don't want any, anything justified on this. This whole thing as well, we could put to align center, which is actually items in this case. Item center, save that. So yeah, we've just implemented that sort of flex row. We've made sure that these are both centrally aligned across the flex axis. Now we want a bit more padding on these. They're not looking very good being central, so we can sort of go through and we can alt all these. And we do it at the same time. So the class, let's just do the 2. Now that is looking much better than it was before. I think we'll keep it like that for now, unless we see anything crazy. As well, I've realised that we're actually going to have something else on the end, which will be a span of just a count. And now we can see we're getting really quite, everything's getting quite cramped here. And actually, instead of the medium sort of screen we were looking at before, maybe we're actually going to have to start looking at large. So once we realise that, it's just a simple change like that. No going through and changing, you know, all the media queries and all that sort of stuff. It's really simple like that. And then, of course, the count would actually have a class originally of hidden. And then when we get to a large screen, we're going to call flex. And now we can see have the sort of mobile size. This is obviously going to be tablet coming into laptop here. When we hit laptop, we get the whole nav bar. So it's quite satisfying to see that, I think, and see that change. Of course, here we probably could introduce some things to make it a little better, because right now this is probably tablet size and it's missing a little bit of fun. So we'll see what we can do about that. But we are trying to keep this super simple, and it is more of just an introduction into Tailwind rather than building a fully fledged super complicated website. Now I'm just going to change the X here. I'm just going to introduce a font awesome icon, which is FA solid bars, which creates a sort of burger bar looking thing. We can see here, burger menu. Eventually we're going to be clicking on this and creating a drop down. And as we see when we go bigger, we change to this. And now what I was speaking about before is keeping the focus on the center of the screen. So let's reduce the size of this. Let's get the adopter port and the count more central, and try and keep everything in a nice central column. So we're going to go to the header. We're going to put a max width to see how useful the sort of emit is here, and we start really coming through for us. And we're going to put 8/12 and see what happens when we get to a. Oh, we need to put that as an XL. We go in, that's not working, so we can have a look at quick search. So we see some live problem solving here, some live technical issues. So we can see I've actually voted max width before, and max width we can use in all those sort of examples. Oh, okay, so the max width I was mixing up with the normal width. So actually, we can remove that. And if we put it like this, now it should work. So yeah, we've got that now. So we've got that taken a big chunk out. And of course, at this point, all we need to do is do the equivalent for the margin. So we need to do mx dash auto, and this is going to center it for us. Oops, sorry, wrong one. And there we go. That's exactly what I was looking for. So those things are staying nice and center for the user. They're not overlapping each other, but they're keeping that sort of stylistic theme that we see a lot nowadays with websites. You know, everything sort of stays really quite central. So yeah, that's another part done. Let's move on. For the parts of the header, when we go here, we have nothing that's really happening when we hover over them. And of course, when we are creating a website, we want it to sort of be interactive. And as well, for accessibility reasons, it'll be really good if we could have this sort of cursor change to a pointer, maybe the color change, maybe the size change. Let's introduce some of these into our project. So let's start with the list. So if we just go from here, so we can go on both at the same time. So we have different sort of ways to do it in Tailwind. So maybe transition, and we can see there transition all comes up, and then we can do the duration. So this is in milliseconds, or you can see here, 75 milliseconds. So we're going to choose 300 for that. Save that. But of course, right now we're not actually transitioning anything, so we need to go to hover, and we want, let's see what cursor does. So cursor pointer. So this is obviously only applying to the first one right now. And we can see we got our cursor pointer there, but nothing else happening on the rest. We know this is definitely working. We hover again. And now let's go for a changing color. So let's go text dash, what's it there, light? Say light? There we go, text light green. So now we're getting a nice little effect of it changing. And of course, now we can start adding things like changing the size and stuff like this. But notice how this sort of P2 transitional duration 300, hover cursor pointer, hover text. I'm going to put the transition in as well. Sorry, not the transition, the scale change as well. We're also transitioning. You know, it starts to get very long. We're going to say the same thing every single time. So what we can do now, so in here, now we're going to create a class, and we're going to call it header or text dash hover. And this is obviously what's going to happen when we hover over one of our items. So what we had before, if we split the screen, it's getting very tight now. We're just going to put this. What we're looking for is when we're hovering over, we want the text. So that's color and typical HTML to be the light green area. And it doesn't translate over here, so I'm just going to get the value from here. So that's the color sorted. What else we want is the cursor to go to pointer, so we can go cursor pointer. That's that sorted. And we also want the size to change, so we're going to do transform scale 0.95. And now we've created a custom style class in our CSS whilst also using Tailwind. So let's go back to here. And now, of course, they're not, the other ones aren't being highlighted. So we can delete all of this, all this hover, and instead of hover, we can go back to styles.css. You can see this is what we call the class. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to put it into our, and now we can see that they all work, apart from the transition. And we can do the same thing with the transition as well. I'm not going to do it here just to save time, but transition all obviously needs to be applied to each of these. Now they're all fully functioning. Unlike this header, we're just going to make a few changes. So like I said before with the transitions, when we're hovering, sorry, now we've got transition all, duration 300 on 4 things that is exactly the same. And also I wanted to apply this to the account and to the adopt pool as well. So we're writing the same thing over and over again, and we want the exact same result. So now we can sort of extract that transition all, duration 300, and we're also going to add the sort of ease in out. So we're going to create a new class. So we're going to go dot. So we want the transition all. So let's call it tran all. We also want the 3 seconds. So -3s, and we're going to go EIO. Not for that the song, whatever it is, but for ease in out. So of course now we're going to go transition all. I think actually 3s first. 3s is in out. We're going to save that, and now instead of putting the 2 tags here for each one, we can just replace it with 1. And in a way, we're sort of, doing what Tailwind does. We leaves it in. They should work exactly the same as they did before. So let's check that. Okay, maybe I had it a bit shorter than that because that's taking forever to work. So let's go back, change it, and of course now because it is, let's change to 1 second. Oh yeah, of course 1 second is actually that was less than a second each time. Let's put it as 0.75 seconds. That's basically what it was before. Get all that sorted, so now let's do it to the adopt pool and the count. So we need to do this tran all 3s EIO and the header text as well. So this is all they need. Let's copy those. We need to add that to adopt pool here, with of course the class, or else it will not work. Save that. Adopt pool now does it, and now we need to do the exact same thing for accounts. And notice as well, I put it there because normally I put the LG at the end, the sort of responsive side of things, at the end of my classes. And then if, for example, I was going to put a hover in here, I would put that after that as well. That's just my personal preference. But you might have yours slightly different. And now we can see they're all shrinking. So I think we're actually going to leave the header here now. I think it looks pretty decent for how many minutes work. When we can go from responsive, that's 212, that's way too small. So we've got iPhone 5 there, we go to responsive, and we can go up, go through, and we can see when we get to the Excel breakpoint, we introduce the sort of proper nav bar. At no point does it look bad or overcramped or cluttered or anything like that. When we get to so that was a large breakpoint, sorry. When we get to the Excel breakpoint, we can really introduce those margins, and we can afford those margins for the bigger screens to keep our users' focus more central. Now we have the styling sorted for the header. So let's sort out the JavaScript and get this drop-down menu working. And just before we do that, I just wanted to change this 3s because it's actually incorrect now. Of course, we're using 0.75. We can't actually use a dot in the styles, so we're going to change it to 750 ms. So it'll actually work in our styles. In styles, we're just going to do the same thing. So 3s, change to 750 ms. And now it is factually correct. Let's get to the JavaScript. Of course, first we're going to actually have to import our script. We're going to defer that script as well to make sure it runs at the end. Probably not too essential here, but if you're going to do it quickly, I suppose. We're going to have our source. Our source, of course, is going to be the main.js. So now we're working with that script. Now we're going to actually have to use it on something, aren't we? So we're going to have below our div, consistently in the header, we're going to call the section. This section is going to be basically exactly the same as our URL before, so there's no real need to type it out again. Of course, we can start getting rid of these that are there. Now we've got rid of that, we don't know what the padding's going to look like or the styling inside this section. So we need to make sure that's sorted. Begin with as well, of course, we're going to have to hide this. Because if it's showing at the start, then it's going to look terrible like it does now. So yeah, let's hide that. So we're going to have to add some JavaScript in to activate this sort of drop-down menu when we click it, and then obviously retract the drop-down menu when we click it again. So we've got that sorted now. Maybe actually, for the time being, I think as soon as it sounds, I'm going to get rid of that. And we're going to work on this menu just here, so whilst we can actually see it. So of course this flex row is going to actually be a col, and that's already looking 10 times better. We're probably going to have to let's center this, justify center, and actually align the items as well, which is item center. That's nice and clean in there. I think I might add a border on the top and bottom as well. And I'm not actually border dash top. Border top 2. Let's see what happens. I actually don't know. Yeah, okay, it works. I'll actually just put a margin at the top on this. Sorry, on this section. Empty dash 4. There we go. Okay, and border top. And then we'll just put a PT dash 2. I think that's what it was like before. There we go. I'm happy with that now. And now when we go to hidden on this, yeah, it's even. Okay, cool. Let's start adding some JavaScript. So to begin, we're going to have to target this section with an ID, and we're going to use drop-down menu for this. And then, of course, on the actual button as well. So where it's a span in this case. And we're going to call this give this the ID of the drop-down button. Makes sense. I just have imported the script as well from main.js. And here we are with the blank script. So let's get these values, let's get these IDs. So we have drop down button here. So we're going to go document, document, get element by ID. And of course, it's called drop down button. And yeah, on and const, and then drop down menu equals document dot get element by ID dd menu. So we've got those values now, so now we need to put an if statement in. Actually an event listener, sorry. So when we're pressing the button of dd button, so we need to do that, dd button add event listener. Of course it's going to be a click, you put whatever you want, but it's going to make a lot more sense to do it with a click than anything else. Maybe double click if you really wanted to, but it makes sense in my opinion. Yeah, we put the sort of anonymous function within the event listener just straight away rather than creating another separate function calling it. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the dd menu. When we click on that, we want to toggle hidden so when we click it, of course it shows. It might work without it. Yeah, it does. So yeah, there we go. We have our sort of drop-down menu working perfectly there every time I click. And that's it for the header. That's everything done. So let's move on to the next section. So now we've got the header sorted, we're going to go for the main. So to begin, we're just going to put a main comment, and then let's add this main tag in. In that main, we're going to have a section, and that's the section we're working on now. And within that, again, we're going to have a div, and that div is just for stylistic purposes in case we want to introduce some sort of margin. So first things first, let's get h1 in there. And we're going to put adopt and animal. We're going to have to increase the size of that. Let's get back to mobile actually, because we are building mobile first. So that of course needs to be bigger. It's going to be central as well. So let's put that text-2 Excel. That looks about right to me. And below that, we're going to have a paragraph of text. We're just going to call Laura 25 on this, just to save time, and let's not just, be wasting our time writing out a load of text when we're here to do a tutorial and work on Tailwind. And at the end of this, we're going to put a button. And for now, we're just going to put the type as button. Nice and simple, and we're just going to put adopt now. So that's looking okay. We've got our things sort of set up, but realistically, we're going to need to sort of center these things. So let's get into the centering. So can we just do text center? So that, yeah, that's all good. And also we're going to have some sort of margin and padding from the top as well. So let's get that in as well. I think that the section should have a nice color. So I'm going to go, let me just type that flex, and then for some reason it's not coming up straight away. Get rid of flex on there now. I just like having that prompt personally. That whole section's gonna have a padding of 5 the whole way around. And let's center this as well. So text dash center. We want this button. Of course, it's looking pretty boring right now. So let's get some padding on that. So on the PX, I'm going to put 4, PY2. Definitely not that. And also, we probably need to change background color as well. So BG. Let's go. Is it a light? Yeah, light green. Oh, definitely not 24. That's a very funny looking button. And to be fair, the whole of this section, instead of putting text center and all that sort of stuff, we'll just put class flex, flex col, and align. Sorry, not align. Item center. And we can get rid of all this text center. Text center. And yeah, okay, that's sorted. We're gonna obviously have some. You've got to have some rounding on the buttons, haven't you? It's just it is what it is. So this is rounded. This is, you can see here at the top, border radius. We're going to go medium on this, and of course as well, we're going to need some sort of padding between the H1, the paragraph, and the button. So let's get that done as well. I think actually on this class we should have text center. It just looks a bit weird, I think, with that on the left hand side, and typically on mobile it does for some reason look better centered. This H1 sorted, so the text to Excel, of course, P for padding, and let's just do PY of 5, and let's have a look at how this comes out as well. I probably want no, I might put this text as for Excel like it was before. I have a feeling it might be too big, but you gotta try it out. Yeah, it's a little too big. Let's try 3. And at the same time, let's have a look. I think the paragraph is looking okay. We just need some padding for that as well. Let's just put PY-3 on there. So PY is obviously padding on the y-axis, and all this sort of stuff you can, if you're struggling or you need to find something that you can't seem to find, then yeah, have a look at the documentation. In my opinion, it's really good. So that's even now. So see, I've done PY2 on the top, PY3 in the middle, and PY2 on the button. So it's quite evenly separated, but I thought the button needs a bit more, and I'm going to put that. Actually, I'm going to put margin on that instead. I'm going to put margin top -3. I just want that just to be really separate and on its own. So yeah, I quite like that. I think the padding on the bottom of this, I do want it to be a bit more. And I know I'm not being too sophisticated with this, but I'm trying to do it quickly. So let's add some more padding to the bottom. So let's do PV-3. Oh no, that's going to reduce it. PV-8. Yeah, that's looking good to me. So from here, we don't need a hover on this because of course this is mobile. And when we're starting to get bigger, obviously we can see that this is just looking a bit silly now. If we get to sort of this sort of size, you know, that we don't want the text across like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put an image on the right hand side, and of course get this text moved to the left hand side so that it's not just, you know, really badly spread out across the whole page on a sort of desktop or laptop. So let's get that done now. So we still want this div, but actually what we could do is add a secondary div below, and that's how we're going to separate these sections. So the div on the left is going to have all this stuff in, and this is going to cover the left hand side, and then we're just going to have the image in a div on its own. So we've got that in an image on the right hand side, and of course this is going to be hidden to begin with, so we can definitely put that as class hidden, and we need to work out what sort of size this is going to work for as well. Of course on here we need this flex to be flex row actually, although it doesn't actually matter for mobile. And then on the div that we've just created, yeah, we're just going to change that to flex column. So now for the image we're going to use actually something called PlaceDog. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a great sort of site that provides basically placeholder images on our dogs, and of course this being an animal themed site, it kind of makes sense to use that. So we're going to put that in there, and the 300 is the sort of size it is, and we're just going to make the screen bigger. Actually, of course, we're going to need to change this to, we're going to choose large to begin with, so large, let's just put it flex, and we're going to do that twice. Okay, let's have a look, see what's happening. Okay, so we've got that image there, that the little dog going for a run, and of course now this is where the sort of div comes in to begin with. This is why I put that stylistic div, because right now this is obviously way too big, and especially when we get to the large screen, it just looks a bit silly, doesn't it? So let's improve that, reduce the size of this, and get that sorted. I think mobile we're actually done. So yeah, let's have a look at the sort of laptop / desktop size. When we get to large, we want to sort of reduce the width of it. So we're going to begin with a max. Actually, no, did this earlier. No, just width 10/12, and we'll see how that comes out. We want to have sort of the of course with this we need the margin sorted as well, mx-auto, so that we are centered nicely. And we're also going to change the, well, we're actually going to just set this. So we're going to change this to justify around. Hopefully give a nice effect. So let's see what we get after these changes. I'm going to increase the size, and there the image comes in. So it is looking a bit better. We could maybe even go a little bit smaller on that actually, especially at the sort of XL. So yeah, I'm actually going to make that smaller. I'm going to go for, let's go for 8. As well as that, I want to put some more padding when we go large. So when we get to large, I'm going to put padding of, let's go 20, sorry, p/20. Yeah, I like that. I think here we probably do need to get this text onto the left, and this image is also a bit small as well. So yeah, let's work with that. I want to add some stuff to the image as well. So I want the class. I always like it to be rounded, to be honest. Rounded, and I'm going to call the min width of full. Sort this out. So we're going to go LG text left instead, and that'll get it to the left when we go on the larger screens. Yeah, I'm going to put LG flex shrink 0 to, because I want that image to stay the same size. It's getting a bit too small when we go into shrinking the screen. So yeah, let's do that. And as well, for the paragraph and the image, I just want to add some padding to the sort of inside of that. So we're going to put the PL, let's do -5, so that's padding left 5. So then on this div, we should also put LG padding right -5, just to make it even. And now we're going to see how that looks on a large screen. There we go. See how that image is staying nice and big now. That is kind of exactly the sort of thing I wanted to go for, because before, if you remember, it was just getting really small, and that's just something to avoid. You see here the writing now is going more sync to the left, and we've just got a bit more padding. I might actually add more writing here, or I might actually reduce the size of this, so just put a max width on it. What I could do is make the text bigger, because we're getting on quite a big screen now, and I could even make the top bit bigger as well. So yeah, I think I want to do that. I think I want to go, when we go to large, let's put the H1 to the left as well, so text left, and we want the text to be bigger as well. So let's go, we're on 3XL right now, so let's go 5XL. Let's see if we're been a bit ridiculous there. We'll see in a second, I suppose. And then this text as well. So when we go large, we want to go to, we definitely want it smaller than the header, let's go 2x. Oh no, I pressed 3, so let's see what happens. Sorry, and that's text 3XL. Press save on that. Okay, yeah, that is definitely. I think that's okay for bigger. Maybe not actually. Maybe not. Where did it break? You see, at this point, well before the break point, it's looking a bit weird. So let's maybe increase the width here. So when we go large, let's put it 10 out of 12, just because now we've increased the size of the text, we do really need a bit more space. And we can see that here. Oops. Okay, that is looking a lot better. I do think that having the adopt an animal on the left hand side, actually I might put the adopt now on the left hand side as well. I just want to check what's happening when we go small. Yeah, I think it's just getting a bit too cramped when we go to here, so we're going to change this to 2XL. We're going to do text left on the large, which already should be the H1, and then on the button as well. So when we get to large, we want to. Oh, okay. I know why it's happened, because I've aligned the text, but the flex is still central. So we're going to go large, and we're going to go self start. There we go. And the same with the header. So instead of text left, because it actually was never set to center or anything, so it wasn't actually the text left that was doing that. It was the flex. And there we go. I personally think that's looking a lot better. I still do think this is definitely a bit too wide. That's probably on XL. Let's see where we go. So we have the XL breakpoint there. Maybe we could just put a max width of 60% maybe on that. So yeah, let's have a look at that now. So we go like that, and then when we get to XL max W. I need to double check this as well, because no, I'm just going to put W dash, and let's do, where's 2/3? Is it there? 66%. Let's see what happens. Oh no. So let's go back, and if we do this, we should finally have this sorted. So XL, because we're on, this is only happening on the XL size, we're changing the width to 2/3, 66.66%. So let's do self start. And yeah, there we go. I say even on the big screen, maybe these are a bit too far apart now, but we can also change that. So if we go XL on this class here, so if we just make it a little smaller, so it's, before it was 10/12 the width, so let's go 8/12, and let's see what's going on. Yeah, okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So now we've got the next section done. So we go from, let's go back down to, let's go full screen here. Let's go back down to the 320-ish is the iPhone 5. So we keep going up, and instead of having a break, we have a breakpoint coming up here, and there we go. We get the image come up, and the text moves down to the left. And we can see that as we scroll up, we get another breakpoint there. So we've got these two separated. And if we just come out of it all together, this whole thing is responsive. So we've created sort of the responsiveness for the next section. So let's move on to the triple section of the sort of how, why, and when. So like last time, let's go down add a comment in, and we are going to just call this how, why, when. And of course, same as before, actually this should be inside the main. Cut that, how, why, when, and this is another section within that. And of course the div, style purposes, in case we want to do the margin like we did last time. And in this div, we're going to have 3 separate sections, so the how, the why, and the when. So let's get started with those. So at the top, I want to have an image. So actually, to start, let's just do the div. So we've got the div sorted there, and this is the start of one of these sections. So now let's introduce, what I want at the top is like a span that's going to have an icon at the top, which I'm going to bring in a second. I want like a H3, and the first one is going to be how, and then after that we're going to have a paragraph. And for this we're just going to do the same thing, Laura 25, the Emmet abbreviation that's I've been using throughout this, really useful. I'm pretty sure it's pre-built into VS Code as well, so you don't need to do an extension or anything. So let's save that and see what we get. So I have this sorted here, and I have the one awesome icon I want to use, so I'm just going to grab that quickly. Want to have this. Do the how question with the sort of light bulb. So we have that section sorted, and let's go to mobile because we are building mobile first. And let's go to iPhone SE. And of course, right now it's looking pretty terrible. So let's actually center this whole thing. So let's go in this div and center everything. So everything's already in a column, so that's okay. Because it's in the div, like all the things sitting on top of each other, of course. But let's just add the class, and let's just get flex col, and align item center. I keep doing that. It's item center. That's everything in a line. And from here now, we want to start working with the sort of different font sizes, and of course introducing padding and margin and all those sorts of things. So let's get this to be centered. So for that we want to take center. For the how, we definitely want some padding on that, and we definitely want to increase the size. So let's do the class. Let's just do margin actually. Let's use margin Y, so margin on the Y axis as 3, and let's do text to XL. And notice now as well, I'm going through it, I don't need to look at the sort of documentation anymore. That's not because I'm, you know, unbelievably skilled at this. It's because I've just done it enough times for me to learn it. So yeah, as soon as you do it enough times, you'll definitely be in a situation where you can do the same and won't have to refer to sort of documentation a lot. For here, I'm going to just do the text. Because it's quite small, that light bulb, and I do want it to be quite big, I might even put 5XL. That might be a massive, a massive mistake on my part, just massively underjudging it. That's actually okay. I think I might actually go 4XL. And whilst we do the 4XL, let's definitely get some sort of padding on this section as well. So instead of putting it on the sort of surrounding div, I'm going to put it on the individual divs, because it'll just give it a more sort of uniform feel. So let's add a padding, and we want it on all axes actually, because you can see the sides of the text and the paragraph are really quite close to the edge. So at the top we actually use P5 for everything, so that should give us a sort of everything in line here. And then of course we do probably want a bit more there, so let's just put margin top. No, we're going to just put margin actually of Y. I'm going to put margin Y. Did I use a specific value up here? I don't think I did actually. But let's just put 5. See what it looks like. It doesn't have to be perfectly aligned with this section here. Okay, yeah, that's looking okay, I think. The padding on the Y, I'm actually going to I'm going to put padding X there. I'm going to put padding Y. No, wrong point, sorry. So I'm going to reduce the padding between the light bulb and the hair, and I do think that is a little too big. So I'm going to change that to 1. And at the same time, for the paragraph, I might add a little padding to it. So I'm going to do padding bottom of 1 as well. Sorry, this should be padding top, of course, to take us away from the hair. And then now that's done, we can start doing the other sections. So that's looking pretty decent to me. So let's get this whole div here, and let's copy paste it. Let's be lazy, and then we need to change this to, so it's hair Y, and then this bottom one is when. And of course it would make sense to change these sort of like this light bulb to a different sort of icon. So I'm going to just import these now. Now I've imported these, so we've got this extra eye in here. This is, if you're following along, this is what you need. And of course, from the very start, the sort of font awesome that I imported to the HTML. So now we've got these 3 sort of distinct sections. And I just want to sort of differentiate the Y from the other ones. So I'm going to actually change the color of the text in this one. So we're just going to call this text, and we're just going to make it, we want to keep it dark. We're just going to call it, so dark green there. But it's not massively different. It's not going to make it like it completely look out of place, but it just marks that there's a significant change there. Now we need to make it responsive for the tablets, the laptops, etc., etc. And the easy way to do this, of course, is just to start introducing a sort of row of things rather than a column here. So let's work on that now. Let's do this. Let's have a look what happens when we go bigger. Change is responsive. Okay, we definitely want to change that, don't we? So that's the breakpoint there where the image is introduced. So maybe let's use this exact same breakpoint, large, to turn these into columns and see how it looks. So first things, we need to go into the divs here. So this div is this one here. So let's go into class. And when we go large, we want to go, well, we need to put flex actually to begin with. Flex, then we go large, we're going to go flex row. And that should automatically change everything. And then when we go into here as well, so the individual divs, when we go large, we want the width to really be, I'm going to say 25%. Let's have a look what that looks like to begin with. So we're just going to copy paste these in to save time. So yeah, it's there, and this one here. So let's have a look what happens when we go large on the screen. So yeah, that's actually not too bad, I don't think. Of course, we need to now put this to center all these. So let's put our div, so when we go large, we need the MX to be auto. I actually don't think we'd need the large there, but it's okay. Item center, justify center. So yeah, this section is really was really quite easy, and it looks good at all the sort of sizes. But now when we go smaller, of course, this flex row doesn't kick in, so we need to go to flex col here, and now we should be all good on this section. There we are. We can have another look at responsiveness. Yes, we have that breakpoint there. It's starting to look a little bit silly, and then we have the breakpoint upon which it's looking all good. So we're just going to add some sort of padding and stuff to this as well, just to finish off this bit. So when we get to a certain size. I think here, because look at the space we have here, we don't have too much on this side. So let's go, this is the container div here. So when we go large, we want the padding to be 20 instead. This should make, yeah, a big difference there. And at this point it is still kind of, it is quite tight. I might actually increase that quarter to, let's just do a third, because we have the restraint of the width. And of course, because there's 3 little bits in here, it automatically will sort of break up the section on itself. Let's go to a third on each of these. Let's go check the responsiveness. Okay, yeah, that's looking a lot better for me. And that's it for that section. We've got the responsiveness done for the whole screen. Let's just show that one last time. So we've got full screen here. We've got a nice bit of padding. And then when we go through from this sort of size to sort of laptop to tablet to mobile, everything's all looking good. So we can move on to the next section. So this is going to be the final section, and on this one we are going to build a footer. I was going to add in like a contact us, but I feel like it's getting too long, and the thing is, you always learn better by yourself. So I would challenge you to create a sort of contact us page with the sort of information you got here. Everything you need is here and on the documentation. So, you know, go and make that jump for yourself, and yeah, build your own sort of contact us, and build on this as well and apply it to your own projects, because that is, in my opinion, the best way that you learn. So let's build the footer. And of course, in this we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put that div in there just for stylistic purposes, in case we want to add a margin, which eventually we will. Within this as well, we're going to add a sort of homage to ourselves. So let's add a span. And we're going to put, so for me it'll be Lewis Broadhurst 2022. This same page we're going to have a sort of UL, which is going to have 4 list items, and that is going to be actually 3 list items. So it's going to be cookies, privacy, and careers. And actually it isn't 4, because the most obvious one, T's and C's, need to be added. So let's have a look at that now. So we've got those all lined up. Of course, we're expecting this to be, let's go back to mobile, because we are building mobile first. And of course, we sort of want these to not just be stacked like that. We want it a bit more interesting than that. Put these in a row. So on a, well, actually on a smaller screen, we want them on top of each other. So we do want these in a row though. So we do want the UL in a row. So we're going to have flex row. Let's justify center and item center as well, because of course we want them center, and just to make sure that there's nothing going up or down. And there we go. That's all that's sorted. And all of these, so if you use Alt on Windows, I can't remember it's on Mac, but yeah, I'm sure you can find it. We can do all these at the same time. So we can do class, and we're going to use px-2, and that should give us some nice padding there. And then on the Lewis Broadhurst as well, I am going to do this actually. So I was debating whether to do this, but I am. So I'm just going to copy and paste this in, because it's lots of font awesome stuff again. But just take your time, just copy it over, or maybe add your own ones as well. So I'm going to do that quickly now. So we've got that in there, and instead of putting the span at the end, I'm just going to put it in here, which obviously then needs to change to list. And just LI here. So that's just like Twitter, GitHub, LinkedIn, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, all that's sorted. I prefer it on the other side though, actually. So I'm just going to switch that up. So here we're going to have to center these the same as we did with the top. So we've got flex on, flex row. So let's just get justify center and item center. That is sort of the footer. And as we had the sort of green on top, I feel like it will make sense to end it with the green on the bottom. So we're going to add that in now. So we need class, and then the background of dark green A, I believe it is. Sometimes the IntelliSense doesn't work for the first one. I'm not really sure why, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Yeah. And of course, now we need to do text Y, and of course, as well, we would need some padding, especially on the Y-axis here. So we're going to put PY 5. I think it's actually okay on the X-axis, so left and right, and maybe a bit less. I'm going to put that to 4, and then I'm going to put some padding on the top and bottom of these, this div and the UL. So let's just do margin top, actually, margin top 1, and then margin bottom -1, just to separate these a little. And yeah, I think we're pretty much done for mobile. Let's just have make sure we go on mobile, iPhone 5. So yeah, that's pretty decent for me. I'm not too fussed about that. You could be a bit more picky, and you could change these maybe into buttons or A tags or whatever, but of course it isn't actually necessary. So now let's make this responsive for a larger screen. So let's just get rid of this, inspect. And actually, with things like this, we could just leave it, because no matter how big we get, it still does actually look pretty decent. But what we could do is put them in line. So I'm going to do that actually. So I just need to check how wide we went on the header. So we went 8/12. So on the bottom we can do the same. So we'll just put it 2 out of 3 because that's what it is. So large, extra large, sorry, 2/3. And then extra large, you want to go to oh no, we want to do it here, of course. So here, that this whole thing should actually be, because I use the div, the stylistic div as the this part here. I've actually kind of messed up. I need to go back. I'm gonna take that. With the class of that, we're gonna take the div. So this is the stylistic div. The only use for it is to keep the background, because if we did put the Excel like a width -2/3 on the top, then the header, the footer's background would also have the same effect. So that is why we do it, just to explain, just in case you're wondering. So here we want to go mx-auto. So when we're on an extra large screen, we should get that sorted. And then also we want to have, so this whole thing right now is flex on the small screen, flex, column. And then when we go XL, we want to go flex-row. And we do have a minor problem, because this is why you should always do things in a uniform fashion, because we have the margin top here and the margin bottom there. And of course, that means, I will just show you, that when we go to the extra large screen, we get this weird sort of, displacement. So I'm not going to change it for now. It's something that maybe you could do as like a bit of homework for yourself. But I'm just going to put that Excel there just at the end. And on this margin top, instead of that Excel MT is obviously 0. And we'll copy that. And on this one, it should be margin bottom as 0. So that should remove the sort of displacement we get. Now it's all in line, and now we can do something like, we've got a flex row there. So Excel, let's do justify between. And there we go, that's the footer done. We can do some hover states as well. So if we do, we could do the same as we had before. So instead of, you know, repeating ourselves over and over again on the same part of, you know, in the same HTML, we can just create small classes. A similar thing, as we had at the top, we're just going to go a little bit smaller and then change to a lighter color. So I am going to be a bit naughty and take this. But of course we don't want it to call header text. Even if it is the exact same thing, we should either change it to header/footer text or whatever it is, because if someone else is looking at our code, we don't want to, you know, kind of ruin it for them. We also need the sort of this transition as well. So we're going to get that, and we are going to add it to our HTML. The whole of the footer class, we can just add the transition. And then for the things that we specifically want to have this sort of hover effect, we'll add that to. So that is kind of basically everything in here. So you see, even with this as well, this is the sort of negative of HTML that I spoke about at the start. Sorry, Tailwind at the start, is because, you know, you do end up with all these classes on top of each other. And we'll have an overview of this in a bit. And even in sort of this instance where we've really reduced the amount of code that we're writing in one line, maybe I could just put that into a smaller class, but of course then a smaller CSS selector, but of course then it wouldn't be as descriptive. So it is a tough one to work out, but that's that sorted. And then when we hover over things, we get what we wanted. We get the things getting made smaller. And actually this isn't working. So let's go through, add these. They're all added now. And as we go over to the page, we can see we get our transitions working really nicely. So that's it for the website. Fully responsive. We've got some cool little transitions as well. We haven't actually done this button, which I completely forgot about. Let's just go quickly do that button, because everyone enjoys a good transition. Let's go in and just do it straight in line with everything. Let's not make an extra class for it, because it is the only thing we're doing. But if we were using React, say, and we were making a much bigger website, we could reuse this button in a sort of in a component, and that's one of the massive positives of React. So we could make that component, do the CSS for it, and never have to worry about the sort of CSS again, unless we want to specifically change it and pass it through as a prop or something like that. But of course, that's way past what we're doing here. So let's get started on this button. We are, and in this sort of area, actually all you do is you do hover. So when we hover over it, we're going to change the text to white. And when we hover again, we're going to do the background to the dark green A. And that should give us the sort of transition that we wanted to see. And as well, to do the transition in line with the sort of rest of the Tailwind theme, put transition there, transition all, and duration of 300. So now we just get a nice sort of gentle change of color rather than the very sharp one that came before. Also, we can do the scaling as well in here. So we should do hover, scale, 95, and we can see straight away what's coming up there. And which sort of gives us hints. That's why the IntelliSense for Tailwind is so good. I really recommend to install that. Hopefully you did at the start. And there we go. That's it done completely now. Got the adopts now sorted. We've got our navbar, our account, our footer's looking good. Maybe we could increase the size of the text on the footer actually. But generally this is it. This is all done. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something and you could see how that Tailwind is actually really useful, and we didn't actually write, we wrote what, three like selectors in the CSS, and we did actually a whole sort of static page of a website, which is quite crazy really. And when you look at the documentation and stuff, you really do start to see how powerful this can be. So yeah, that's it from me for this tutorial. I do really hope you enjoyed it and learned some Tailwind from it as well. Hopefully I showed why it's so useful, because writing those sort of styling things in line also does sort of go against the sort of separation of concerns that HTML, CSS and JavaScript have. It just does do it really well, and if you're sort of well versed with CSS, it can be really useful. That documentation again is so good, so if you have any troubles, refer to it and you'll find literally anything you need. And if you can't do what you wanted to do in Tailwind, or if for example the example we used, you know, there's so many things that we're putting in that were the same classes over and over again, the same sort of Tailwind abbreviations we were using, then you can just create your own custom class, or you know, I'm sure you can integrate SAS with it as well. So if you're if you're a massive SAS user, you can use that. Hopefully you really enjoyed it. Let me know if you did. Let me know what you thought about the tutorial in general as well, because it's my first one, so I probably was a little rusty at times. I definitely felt it whilst recording it. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, please like, please comment if you enjoyed it, if you'd like to see more of this sort of stuff, and hopefully I'll see you on